Hello, this is a series of short videos designed for international students. My intention is to draw your attention to the main problems that international students may have when writing their assignments and to try and show you the common problems that assignments written by international students have so that you can try and avoid them. Now, the first section is to do with language usage and grammar, which is potentially one of the most difficult aspects for international students to get right, understandably so. Now, these are some quotes that I actually got from assignments written by international students, and it was actually not difficult at all to find examples of quotes that included linguistic inaccuracies. For example, in this first quote, the person wrote, in most of the lessons, the first minutes were devoted to a starter that reminded, and then I should probably say, reminded students of the content that they had covered the day before, for example. That would be one way of getting that sentence correct. Now, it's important that you also pay attention to the pointers given to you by word. For example, this word here, interest, it's got a squiggly red line underneath, so it's bound to be inaccurate. And in this case, it almost looks more like a typo than a linguistic inaccuracy as such. But it's important that you pay attention to, those pointers given by word, and that you try and get the language to be as accurate as possible. With exists, it's got the squiggly line in green, and this is a verb that normally goes after the noun in English and not before. So you would say a large number of methods and resources to use as a teacher exist. These are just a couple of examples. There are more mistakes included in those two sections. Now, this is particularly important because if we look at the assignment assessment criteria and level descriptions, you can see that under product, which is a fourth of the actual grade, under fail, you would actually see significant comprehension difficulties for the reader. So it's important that we try and make, to avoid any comprehension problems for the reader here. And the margin of fail, slightly more lenient. You have got some linguistic flaws, compromising meaning in places. So even if you just have some linguistic inaccuracies here and there, but meaning is still compromised in places, you could end up with a marginal fail, not necessarily overall, but certainly under product, which can sometimes, compromise the whole assignment, and you could end up failing as a result of the language not being accurate enough. Now, our advice to you is always that you try and find somebody that can be your sympathetic proofreader, somebody that can read your assignment before you hand it in. It's important that you become organized and that you finish your assignment a few days before the deadline so that your proofreader has got a chance to look through your assignment and to read it carefully to make sure that the meaning is clear and that it is conveyed with with language that is English, as opposed to not necessarily just accurate, but also that sounds natural. Now, another small issue could be the register. For example, this person here wrote, every kid is given the correct level of book. Now, kid is certainly not a phrase that I would expect in an academic writing, so you need to try and use other terms, children, student, pupil, etc. This sentence, for example, less of an issue with it, but it's just a bit simplistic. For example, on the second day of term, the Year 5 teacher did a spelling test. She gave them 40 words, some tricky than others. I mean, there's also the issue there that it should be trickier than others. But, it's just expressed in a very simplistic manner. And it could certainly be improved by saying, for example, on the second day of term, the teacher gave out a spelling test and of varying level of difficulty, for example, something along those lines. And that's the end of the first video. Thanks for listening.